At dawn on April 17, 1907, the fog lifted just enough for a copper-green statue to emerge from the harbor. A woman with a torch stood still while the ship moved, and on the crowded deck 1,000 hearts moved with it, some with hope, some with fear, all with history about to begin. The steamship Lusitania cut through New York Harbor with a patience learned from years at sea. On its decks stood men and women whose names would not appear in newspapers, whose faces would not be carved into stone, yet whose choices would quietly shape the country they were entering. America, at the beginning of the 20th century, was a nation still learning what it was becoming. Factories were rising, railroads knitting together distant places, and cities swelling with people who spoke dozens of languages and carried dozens of memories. The country was powerful but unfinished, confident but uncertain, and it needed hands, millions of them. Among those hands were the calloused fingers of a young man named Tomasz Kowalczyk. He was 24, from a village near Krakow, then under Austro-Hungarian rule. His passport listed him as a laborer. His luggage consisted of a canvas bag with 2 shirts, a loaf of black bread hardened by the journey, and a letter folded so many times the creases had become permanent. The letter was from his older brother, Jan, who had come to America 3 years earlier and now worked in a steel mill in Pennsylvania. "There is work," Jan had written. "It is hard, but it pays. If you are strong and careful, you can live." Tomasz had left behind a mother who cried without sound, a father who pretended not to watch the road as his son walked away, and a land where the soil was thin and the taxes heavy. He did not leave because he wanted to abandon his home. He left because history had narrowed his choices. In Europe, empires pressed down on villages like his, extracting labor and loyalty while offering little security. In America, so the stories went, a man could trade sweat for wages and hope for something more solid than promises. When the Lusitania docked, the passengers were herded toward ferries that would take them to Ellis Island. The island was not America yet, not quite. It was a threshold, a place of questions and waiting. Doctors with chalk marked coats with symbols that meant suspicion, an eye infection, a limp, a cough. Inspectors asked names and ages, destinations and finances. The process was designed to be efficient, not gentle. The nation wanted workers, but it also wanted to choose them. Tomasz answered in halting English learned from a pamphlet. He spelled his name slowly. An inspector, mishearing the consonants, wrote Kowalski. Tomasz nodded. The name would stay that way. History often changes through small misunderstandings. He passed the medical exam. He was strong, young, and unremarkable in the way that allowed people to move forward. Within hours, he stood on the mainland, looking at buildings taller than anything he had seen, and streets louder than any market day at home. America did not welcome him with speeches. It welcomed him with noise and indifference, which, in its way, was a kind of freedom. Tomasz traveled by train to Pennsylvania, where Jan lived in a boarding house near the mill. The work was exactly as described: 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, heat that burned the lungs, noise that never fully left the ears. Steel was the backbone of modern America, rails, bridges, buildings, and it demanded men who could endure its making. Accidents were common, safety regulations were few. The mill did not ask where Tomasz came from, only whether he could lift, carry, and return the next day. He sent money home. He learned more English, enough to joke and argue. He attended Mass on Sundays with other Poles, Italians, Slovaks, and Irishmen, all of them far from home, all of them forming a new kind of community out of shared exhaustion. America in those years was less a melting pot than a crowded table where everyone was still learning the rules. In 1914, Europe erupted into war. News arrived in fragments, carried by letters and newspapers in foreign languages. Tomasz's village lay in a region contested by armies. His parents wrote that soldiers had taken grain, that young men were being conscripted, that life had become uncertain in new ways. Tomasz could not go back even if he wanted to. He was an alien, a worker, a man between worlds. When the United States entered the war in 1917, the mills intensified production. Steel was needed for ships and weapons. Tomasz registered for the draft as required. He was not selected. Some of his friends were. They went to training camps and then to France, where they fought in a war that was both modern and medieval in its cruelty. When the armistice came in 1918, celebrations erupted in American cities. The war was over, but its consequences were not.
The post-war years were uneasy. Labor strikes spread as workers demanded better wages and safer conditions. Immigrants were often blamed for unrest, accused of radicalism and disloyalty. In 1921 and 1924, Congress passed laws severely restricting immigration, establishing quotas based on national origin. The door that had opened for Tomasz began to close for others like him. By then, Tomasz had married. His wife, Anna, arrived in 1920, one of the last before the quotas tightened. They met through family connections, spoke the same language, shared the same memories of a place they now described with equal parts longing and relief. They rented a small house and in 1922 had a son, Joseph. Yusuf at home, Joe at school. Joe grew up American in ways his parents never fully would. He spoke English without an accent, learned American history in school, and absorbed the unspoken rules of belonging. He also translated for his parents, explained bills, and navigated a society that still saw them as outsiders. Identity for Joe was not a question of choosing one side or another. It was a balancing act. In 1929, the stock market crashed, the Great Depression followed, and the mills slowed. Men who had worked steadily for decades were laid off with little explanation. Tomasz, now in his 40s, found himself competing for fewer jobs with younger men and newly arrived migrants from the American South. Pride did not put food on the table. Anna took in sewing. Joe left school early to work odd jobs. The Depression tested the promises America had made, implicitly and explicitly. For many, it was a reminder that opportunity was fragile. Yet it also revealed networks of support, churches, unions, neighbors, built by people who had learned, often the hard way, that survival was collective. Tomasz joined a union, cautious but hopeful. He had learned that silence did not protect you. Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal brought some relief. Public works projects offered employment. Regulations improved conditions. It was not enough to erase hardship, but it signaled that the government recognized a responsibility to its people. For immigrants like Tomasz, who had come from places where the state was something to endure rather than trust, this was a significant shift. When World War II began in Europe in 1939, the echoes of the previous war were unmistakable. This time, the United States entered after the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. Joe enlisted almost immediately. He was 19. He told his parents it was his duty. For Tomasz and Anna, the word war carried memories they had hoped their children would never know. Joe trained, shipped out, and fought in Italy. He wrote letters when he could, describing landscapes that reminded his father of home and violence that reminded him why his father had left. The war was global, but it was also intensely personal. When Joe returned in 1945, thinner and quieter, he carried with him both relief and something unnamed. The post-war years were a period of expansion and confidence in America. The GI Bill helped veterans attend college and buy homes. Joe used it to study engineering. He married, moved to a suburb, and bought a house with a lawn. Tomasz, now aging, watched his son step into a world that seemed both familiar and strange. The sacrifices of one generation had become the stability of the next. Tomasz became a citizen in 1946. The ceremony was brief, the language formal. He raised his right hand and swore allegiance to a country he had served with his labor, supported in war, and criticized when necessary. Citizenship did not erase his past, it acknowledged his present. He died in 1958, buried in a cemetery where the names on the stones told the story of migration: Irish, Italian, Polish, German. Anna lived another decade, long enough to see grandchildren who knew Poland only as a word and a story. They were Americans, unquestioningly so, yet their existence was the result of choices made under pressure across oceans and generations. History often focuses on leaders, laws, and battles. Those matter. But the United States was also shaped by people like Tomasz and Anna and Joe, by their endurance, compromises, and quiet insistence on a better future. Ellis Island processed millions between 1892 and 1954. Each passed through with a story that intersected with larger forces: industrialization, war, economic cycles, and evolving ideas of nationhood. For the American audience of the 21st century, this history is not distant. Debates about immigration, labor, and belonging continue, informed by memories both accurate and selective. The past does not offer simple answers, but it provides context. It reminds us that the country has always been in motion, shaped by people arriving with little more than determination and leaving behind legacies they could not fully imagine. On some mornings, the harbor is still foggy, the statue still stands, ferries still move, and somewhere in the noise of the city, the echoes of those first steps onto unfamiliar ground remain, a testament to the ordinary lives that together made history.